You are Locked On Rockets Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Houston on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
If you were to go into your dictionary right now and look up the word ugly and then add basketball to it, that is what you would have gotten for tonight in Atlanta. It would have said, watch Rockets versus Hawks on January 28th, 2025 to get the definition of ugly, because that is exactly what everything about tonight was. But the end result is all that matters, as the Rockets miraculously find a way to walk away from that one by beating the Hawks and surviving on a back-to-back night to pick up win number 32 of the season, up against the 14 losses on the year. And man, it would have been a rough one to walk away from and go, how you lose to that team? The Hawks stink. I walked away from that game more than anything wondering how they've won as many games they have this season. They are not good, and the Rockets played down to their level all night long. Hello and welcome to the Locked On Rockets Postcast tonight. I am your host, Michael Connor. If you're new to our channel, thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to come on back. There was some good in this game tonight from certain guys. We'll talk about that throughout the night. And overall, why it doesn't matter that you have nights like this in the big picture of things, in the big scheme of things. Tonight's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app and head to FanDuel.com to get started. All right, look, like I mentioned to start the show, everything about tonight was ugly. I really felt like both teams, by the way, were coming off of back-to-back. Both teams traveled into Atlanta last night. Of course, this was a makeup of the postponement that was on the 11th? It was on, yes, the 11th of January. So recent that was the postponement. The Rockets went over there to Atlanta, and there was a bunch of ice storms and whatnot, and they shut it down because the city was shutting down and they didn't have the game that day. The Rockets tried every way that they could to get. Look, here's the disappointing part about tonight. And man, it's always so weird to start a show and be like, there's something disappointing when you win a game, right? Because we could be sitting here, and this is perspective on it. We could be sitting here and talking about a team that is still bad, which is not, and I get that. But once you get to the point where you start playing the basketball that the Rockets have, you're going to get nitpicky. You're allowed to do that as fans. I'm allowed to do it. You're allowed to do it. It's okay. I really felt like coming out, both teams looked like they played last night. I thought all night long, both teams looked like they played all night last night. The Rockets expended a lot of energy. There's a lot of emotional energy to that. But here's the thing. Ime Udoka is not, he ain't taking that excuse. That is not up his alley for how he works. And tonight I felt like the Rockets played into all that crap for the lack of a better word. Just kind of what they did. They got out hustled. They made sloppy mistakes all over the place. One of the things that the Rockets typically do, I think this was kind of telling of the game tonight, the Rockets usually crush on the offensive glass. Crush. They had 6 offensive rebounds tonight. 6. I don't think they had a single offensive rebound in the first half. Let me pull up my first half box score here. No, they didn't have a single offensive rebound in the first half. That's not everything. But look, it's not like they shot the lights out of the ball in the first half. They shot 54% from the field, 31 from 3. They clunked a ton of threes. And really, you go look at the box score tonight and you say, well, they shot 47% from the field. That's not that bad. They were horrendous from the three-point line. They're actually really good from the free throw line. They only missed one free throw tonight. Of course, the night that they play like absolute doo-doo, they shoot the free throws well. I don't understand this team sometimes. They have these nights where they go out offensively and they score 135 and they can't. You go and look at it and they've missed like 16 free throws. Tonight they score 100 points. The offense had no flow to it at all. Nobody really was like awesome. It shouldn't. I mean, Jalen was okay. Just put it that way. Jalen was okay. He had 25. He missed 8 3-pointers. He was almost 50% from the field, but he missed 8 3-pointers. So he only gets an okay grade for tonight. Alpe was okay for his standards. I really felt that, early on, Alpe was looking like he was going to have a much bigger night than he ended up having. Dylan didn't have – what a shock. Dylan did not repeat last night. Amin Thompson did not have much of a night offensively. Actually did well from the free throw line. That was encouraging. Fred VanVleet's weird season continues. He only had 5 points tonight. The only guy that had a really great night tonight is Jayshawn Tate. And that's important that Jayshawn Tate goes out and has those kind of nights. We know with the trade deadline looming, and they want to make trades possibly. That's a night that it shows you're still got some value there in that player. And he has a contract, does Jayshawn Tate, that is movable in a trade that is going to matter in a potential trade. And he doesn't really have a spot, of course, on this basketball team when everybody's healthy. Jayshawn this season, I want to say he's making like $9 million. He's making, no, I was wrong. He's making 7.5, but still, that's an important 7.5 that you can ship off very easily. And the Rockets would be honestly smart to utilize that in a trade. So he had a good night tonight. Maybe, honestly, if you're sitting down and doing player of the game, I think it goes to Jayshawn Tate. Because again, like I mentioned, Jalen ends up at 25 tonight. It was ugly. Everything about his three-point shooting tonight was horrendous. He just kept chucking them up, just clunking them all. But we have gotten spoiled very quickly. It's the truth of the matter. We went from being in the poorhouse as fans of this basketball organization to being all rich and having good rich people problems again. I'd rather have the rich people problems. I'd rather come on here and be like, man, you know what? Sure, they won. That was ugly. Everything about it was ugly. It was sloppy. It wasn't even I think if you piece the two games together from an entertainment standpoint, like if I was a casual viewer of the Houston Rockets, if I was somebody that just popped in, I have League Pass and I just decide, for the next couple of nights, I'm going to watch the Rockets play because I hadn't watched them this year. And I watched them Monday night in Boston and Tuesday night in Atlanta. And again, I know that they've played, they've played? What, 3 of the last 4 days? Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, all of it on the road. I'm not going to shed a tear personally for, they have to travel. Have you been on their jet? Of course you haven't been on their jet. But have you seen their jet? Have you seen the hotels they stay in? They're fine. The travel's not that hard. It's like 2-hour flights everywhere. They're fine. Of course, it's nice to be home, but they are fine. The hardest part's playing the basketball games. The travel part really that's not that big of a deal. It's the playing 3 times before. But look, they sat guys tonight, of course. No Steven Adams, which, defensively matters. No Tari Eason. They're managing him, kind of doing the same. They're saying left ankle soreness for Adams, technically injury. They're putting stuff down on paper, and they're just giving those guys the night off. But they came out tonight and they play, man. Again, if the casual viewer saw them last time, man, this is a really exciting team. It's a really fun team. The amount of energy. It's crazy how good they looked last night. They were crisp. They were efficient. Great defense at times. Not at times, a lot of time. Tonight, I don't even think they played good defense. Honestly, they just got lucky that Atlanta stinks. They were chucking shots left and right. And look at that, they shot 40% from the field tonight, 23 from 3. I didn't realize, I was telling my nephew during the game, I didn't realize how bad of a year Trae Young is having. You go look at his numbers this season. He is shooting the ball poorly. And really the reason why Atlanta stayed in that game, I mean, coming down the stretch in the fourth quarter, kind of like it was early on in the game where they let Atlanta hang around, let Atlanta be in the game. The Rockets were uncharacteristically bad with turnovers. And they turned the ball over a ton tonight. 21 turnovers in the game. I think the Rockets were in single digits last night in Boston in turnovers, if I recall correctly. Atlanta poured in 23 points off of the turnovers tonight. And Atlanta turned the ball over too. The Rockets didn't take advantage of it. Rockets only scored 14 points off of Atlanta's 18 turnovers in the basketball game tonight. Yeah, and to me, again, that's where you're allowed to be frustrated on nights like this. It was clear. You watch that game for any amount of time, you see the talent level difference. There's a really, really big gap between Atlanta and Houston. And again, I am more shocked than anything else of watching them for the first time this season. Because again, I'm not grinding on Eastern Conference basketball that much, and I'm not grinding on Atlanta Hawks basketball on my nights off. How they're they're in the play-in in the East is incredible. They are currently the 9 seed. They entered this one 22-24. They've now lost 6 in a row, by the way. But think about that. Before they were 22-25, they were sitting there with a winning record. How? I don't believe it. That's got to be the fakest winning record in the history of the NBA. They stink. Now the Rockets can, take a breath for a second. Not too long of a rest. They'll be right back to it Thursday. They're heading up to Memphis to play the Grizzlies one last time. All-Star break could get here, though. I will say that. All-Star break could get here, and they'll probably be a little bit happy. There will be some guys that participate. If you missed that earlier today, Amin Thompson was named to the Rising Stars, the sophomore team in that game, which I don't know if they're doing. I think they're doing regular stuff for that, not like the other one, because the All-Star game has changed up this year. Raise your hand if you're going to watch the NBA All-Star game this year. You don't see my hand raised. Product's too bad for me to waste a Sunday night, whatever, watching that. I would watch if a Rocket made it for a little bit. I would tune it in for a minute just to see. But you can't get me to waste my time anymore. You can get me to waste my time on a bad basketball game. And that part of it tonight, I will completely admit to you. I'm like, man, this would be a great night to not have a show. I could go to bed right now, be just fine, instead of watching this ugly A-word basketball game. Because everything about it, again, non-fundamental. It was just so sloppy. That was my thing. It was just so sloppy the entire time. Can't be too picky. Have to remember, again, we were all down in the doghouse when it comes to basketball and how we've watched basketball the last couple of years with the way that they played. Wins are at the end of the night. All that matters is that another tick went in that W column. The Rockets picked up win number. Think about that, guys. Again, we're not to the month of February. Does that close out January schedule? No, they still have one more game in January against Memphis, who they're 3-0 against this season. It is January 28th, and the Rockets picked up their 32nd win of the season. They are winning at almost a 70% clip this season. 70%. It's downright impressive. So I've done all this little nitpicking, all this little talking about things that were ugly tonight and winning ugly and all those things. At the end of the day, they won. And I'll tell you why that's important. We'll do that here in just a brief second as we continue after the Rockets pull off a 100-96 win tonight over the Atlanta Hawks. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, Two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl? Yeah, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. Locked On Rockets Postcast tonight. Hello and welcome to the show. If you're watching live, I am your host, Michael Connor. If you're watching this or if you're listening to this show later on the Locked On Rockets audio feed, thank you for that. I appreciate that. This show is available to you anywhere that you get your podcast. Go and search for Locked On Rockets. It's free. It costs nothing. I shouldn't say free tonight to watch the Rockets because you have to pay for some sort of service to watch the game, but it's free to be a fan, I guess, kind of. If you never go to a game, it's kind of free other than your TV. But the show is available free anywhere that you get it. You get this show plus the Locked On Rockets podcast, which is the daily show hosted by the wonderful, stupendous, tremendous, doesn't have an ugly game like the Rockets, Jackson Gatlin. Go and check out his work on the Locked On Rockets podcast page, whether that's YouTube or, again, anywhere that you get your podcast. He does a great job covering your Rockets on a daily basis. Go and check out what he has to say any given day. Really respect his opinion and the work that he's put in. I've known Jackson for a very long time. We used to work together in radio. He was my producer back in the day on my weekend show when I first got my first crack at being on the air. And you always know it when somebody's talking early on, and I don't want to inflate his ego too much. I don't know if he's going to hear this or not. You guys could tell him. But you knew it when we were doing the show with him back in the day, early on, that he would eventually be behind the microphone instead of the guy, pushing the buttons like we all did at some point. Rockets win tonight, 196. And you know what? For all the little nitpicking stuff I did, whether it's, Jalen Green missing a bunch of threes, making, bad decisions left and right, turnovers left and right as a team, Fred VanVleet having an awful night, the bench not really doing anything other than Jayshawn Tate having a tremendous night tonight. At the end of the day, I do think it's important to keep the perspective that all you have to do is get the victory. If you listen to any of our Texans postcast this year, and look, the end result for any season, look, even if the Rockets this year are playing ahead of schedule for where they're at for our expectations coming into the year, the end result in terms of expectations internally for them as a team, they still want to win it all. Whether you and I have that expectation, we probably don't. I doubt that there's really any of you out there that if you sat down and gave a level-headed answer would say, I expect this team to play in the NBA Finals. That's okay. They might expect that for themselves. But at the end of the day, and again, I brought up the Texans shows because we did that a lot during Texans season this year. They won ugly a lot. It was not pretty. And we would always kind of have the same thing because the same theme is true. It's so cliche. People love to make fun of cliches, and I'll do it sometimes. The reason we have cliches is because they're accurate. That's the truth to it. And cliches are accurate from this standpoint of the win is the win. If you have one more point than the other team, that's all that matters. And yeah, again, I'm being nitpicky at certain things, but I go back through the season, I go through the schedule and look at games like, there's not a ton of games where they've done this. Do they win close? Sure. They're not the most gifted offensive team. Their point differential, their average point differential is 5.7. The team right behind them, Memphis, has a higher point differential per game. They're actually, though, the third best point differential per game in the Western Conference. And a lot of that is in part because, look, they on average allow their opponents 108.2 points per game. They only score 113 or 114. But they're a limited offensive team overall. It's all right. As long as your defense wraps it up like they typically do, it's okay. Is that putting a lot on your defense typically? Yeah. And look, they put a lot. And really, again, tonight, I didn't feel like they played great defense necessarily. Well, they just kind of went through the motions. And you know that all this talk that you and I can have, Ime Udoka is going to tear them apart in the film session that I'm sure they will have tomorrow afternoon at some point in their hotel in Memphis. Absolutely rip them to shreds. That's fine. Good. Because if you are a team that has that expectation that you're going to go deep into the playoffs, and again, for them internally, that they're saying to each other, we're going to go win it all. I think the most important thing in the moments where you don't play well is the honesty, the brutal honesty of it, and the recognition of it. And I expect that we'll see a much different Rockets team come out in a couple of nights when they play Memphis for a fourth time this season. Sometimes in the moment, you got to get slapped in the face. Even the best teams have to have it. Tonight was one of those nights. It's going to be an important one against Memphis. Even if they already have the tiebreaker against them, let's take a little bit of a look ahead to that one and how they keep the good times rolling overall. It's next here in the Locked On Rockets Postcast. All right, our final few minutes here tonight after the win over the Atlanta Hawks. I'm your host, Michael Connor. Thank you for joining us in the Locked On Rockets Postcast. 196 is the final. This game was done, it felt like. Was it like 16-point lead with about 4 minutes left? And all of a sudden you looked up and it's like, it's not like Atlanta was doing anything crazy. Just all of a sudden erased the deficit. Felt like the Rockets contributed a lot to that. Again, played really sloppy, let them right back in the game. And you see it, like we saw it last night. The Rockets got back into that game really quickly against Boston. It happens fast in the NBA. Happened tonight. And you could have walked out of here with a much different tone. And we could have been sitting here saying, this is possibly the worst. I still don't know if any loss this season is going to get worse than that one to Minnesota, where you just completely vomited all over yourself. Vomited all over yourself at home. Again, it was a 16-point lead, like 4 minutes to go in the game. And just lost it. Incredible. Now, going to Memphis in a couple of nights. Like I said a minute ago, they'll play Thursday night, which is the time for that one is at it's a late one. 8:30 p.m. Thursday night. Ooh. They're asking a lot out of me. I'll be here. We'll be here. That's a national TV game, by the way. That's a TNT game Thursday night. So, getting a little love. Rockets have handled Memphis 3 times this season. Rockets match up very well with them. I would expect you're going to see Memphis come out. There's going to be a little bit of an edge to this one. I'd expect it to be a little bit chippy. Would not shock me one bit if we have some technicals called in this one. Would not shock me one bit if we have a little bit of a benches clearing moment as well. Well, look, the simplest thing to keeping your good times rolling as you have been, the offensive effort has to be a lot more consistent. They can't go out and turn the basketball over like they did tonight. They can't go out there and kind of play some old lay defense at times, even though, again, they only allowed 96 points tonight in the game. Well, there was way too much. Transition defense at times wasn't great. There's a lot of that stuff that you have to clean up between now and Thursday. And they will. Look, again, I can completely recognize the moment. They've played 3 out of the last 4 nights on the road, and they've won. They're 32-14. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. And guess what? I expect that after Thursday night, we'll be talking about a basketball team that's 33-14. Because that's where I'm at. I'm not going to expect them to win every game. They're not going to go undefeated the whole season. They will lose again. But I'm going to go ahead and say it. They're going to beat Memphis Thursday night. You guys go ahead, get yourself some rest tonight. Don't forget to join us again Thursday after the game for the Locked On Rockets Postcast. And then hopefully, again, talking about a nice little easy win. Between now and then, hope you guys stay safe, do your thing. We'll talk again Thursday night after Rockets and Grizzlies. I'll have a Locked On Rockets.